They didn't even dim the lights. No warning, no private conversation. Just a cold voice over the mic in front of the entire executive team. Aubrey Langford, my sister said, standing at the podium in a white power suit that made her look like she was attending a Vogue photo shoot instead of a leadership summit. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties at Evercore Logistics. He blinked. Surely I misheard. Surely this was a misprint on the agenda. But Vanessa didn't pause. Didn't flinch. She read from a folded HR document like it was a weather report. We appreciate your years of contribution. A transitional package will be processed through legal. A dozen pairs of eyes turned toward me. Some wide with shock, some already looking away. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. This wasn't just a colleague. This was my little sister. My blood. We had built this company from our father's recovery bed. And now, she was firing me on stage before I'd even taken my seat. Is this a joke? I finally managed, my voice quieter than I meant. Vanessa didn't even look at me. She just signaled to her assistant and moved on to the next bullet point. They moved on without me. That was the part that stuck. Not the firing, not the public shaming, but how easily they all moved on. Like I hadn't signed the first vendor contract. Like I hadn't taken out a second mortgage to cover payroll during the 2011 downturn. Like I hadn't spent a decade being the first one in and the last one out. I felt my stomach drop, not from shock, but from something colder. Recognition. I wasn't just being removed. I was being erased. And the worst part? I had no idea this was coming. If your own family can discard you like a defective asset, what does that say about loyalty? About legacy? About love? If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted the most, stick around. This story is for you. Because the moment Vanessa fired me, she didn't just end my career. She started a war. And I wasn't going to play nice. They say sacrifice is noble, but that's only when people notice. No one ever noticed mine. Not when I canceled my engagement 2 weeks before the wedding because Dad's second stroke hit the night I was supposed to pick up my dress. Not when I sold my apartment in Seattle and moved back to Austin within 48 hours, not to chase opportunity, but to hold together a company that was falling apart. Vanessa sent flowers. She didn't come home. I didn't blame her. Not at first. She had always been the dreamer, the brand builder, the girl with the vision board and the curated LinkedIn. I was the operator. The one who knew what a missed shipment or a bad freight rate could do to a quarterly report. I told myself we were just different, wired differently. That it didn't mean she didn't care. But while Vanessa was pitching to venture funds in San Francisco, I was in Evercore's back office trying to explain to a room full of creditors why we couldn't meet terms but still deserved a second chance. I still remember the exact moment I knew the company might survive. It was 2:13 a.m., the 14th of December, 2011. I was alone in the office, staring at a spreadsheet with red cells like open wounds. Payroll was due in 3 days. Our account was $48,000 short. I cashed out my IRA that night. Every last cent. No one knew. I didn't tell Dad. Didn't tell Vanessa. Didn't even tell my fiancé. He found out months later when the tax penalty hit and called me reckless. I remember staring at him across our kitchen table and realizing I wasn't reckless. I was just alone. And I had been for a long time. Vanessa came home that Christmas in a camel-colored trench and a pair of suede boots that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. She told me I looked tired. I smiled. She took selfies with Dad. I signed a bridge loan renewal in the garage. I kept telling myself it would be worth it. That one day, when the company was strong again, things would feel different. That maybe I'd finally sleep through a night without checking Slack at 3 a.m. Maybe I'd take a vacation. Maybe Dad would say something like, "You saved us." But no one ever did. The meetings kept coming. The fires kept flaring. I kept solving. And slowly, without even realizing it, I stopped asking for credit. Stopped expecting appreciation. Stopped thinking about myself at all. There was always another urgent shipment, Another HR crisis, another quarter to pull out of the red. And somewhere in all that noise, I disappeared. That's the truth no one tells you about being the backbone. You hold everyone up until the day they no longer feel the weight. And by then, you're already invisible. The first real crack didn't come with a scream or a slammed door. It came with a shared Google Drive folder. I was sorting through old financial statements a few days after the firing, trying to wrap up loose ends, close accounts, and salvage what dignity I had left. The plan was simple: tie the bow, walk away clean. But buried inside the legal archives beneath standard NDAs and template agreements was a folder I didn't recognize. Succession Strategy, VL. At first, I thought it was a backup from HR. Maybe something to do with Dad's retirement. But when I opened it, my breath caught. There were meeting transcripts, memos, private emails between Vanessa and board members, strategy drafts dating back nearly a year. Each file was dated, each carefully labeled, each colder than the last. And none of them included me. Not even once. There it was, in black and white, a step-by-step plan to position Vanessa as CEO before Dad had even stepped down, before he had even passed, before I had time to catch my breath. Some lines were harmless enough. Rebrand for modernization. Streamline executive structure. But others cut like a scalpel. Aubrey's role to be redefined under non-strategic operations. Minimize board visibility transition. Influence gradually. I scrolled, and scrolled, and scrolled. The deeper I went, the more detailed it became. Proposed scripts for Vanessa's interviews. Draft speeches. A timeline. Even mock Q&A answers for investors questioning why the co-founder wasn't present in leadership photos anymore. That was me. The co-founder. The ghost. I leaned back in my chair, eyes burning. So, this wasn't a sudden decision. It wasn't panic or politics or stress. It was a long game. A quiet, calculated face-out. And I hadn't seen it coming, not because I was naive, but because I trusted her. Because we were sisters. We had buried the same father, shared the same hospital benches, held the same shaky pen when signing our first client. But somewhere along the way, I became a liability. A relic. I clicked through one last fill-in internal assessment titled Legacy Risk Factors. At the top, under bold font, was one name. Aubrey Langford. I don't remember standing up. I just know I was suddenly pacing. My hands were shaking, and I had that strange, split-second thought, this can't be real. This has to be a mistake. But it wasn't. Vanessa hadn't fired me on a whim. She had been preparing for it long before I ever felt the ground shift. Long before the lights dimmed at that conference. Long before I was forced off stage. The fracture had started long ago. I just hadn't heard the crack. It happened 2 summers ago, on a day so quiet it felt almost suspicious. We were at the family cabin near Twin Pines Lake. It was just Grandpa and me. Vanessa had RSVP'd can't make it, and Dad had stayed home with a migraine that I suspected was more emotional than physical. The air smelled like motor oil and pine needles, and the old aluminum boat on the dock wheezed with every ripple of the water. Grandpa was already out on the porch by the time I brought out the coffee. "You still drink it black?" he asked without looking up. I nodded, smiling. "Just like you." He grunted, then patted the seat beside him. I sat, expecting idle small talk. Maybe a lecture about how I needed to stop sleeping at the office. What I didn't expect was the rusted metal box sitting between his feet. "I've been meaning to give you something," he said. I looked at the box, confused. "What is it?" His hands were slower now, thinner, veins like river maps under skin. But he still moved with purpose. He opened the lid, pulled out a worn leather folder, and set it on the table. Then came the pen. Not just any pen. His pen. Brass casing, initials engraved in cursive script. The one he used to sign every major deal, every land purchase, every founder document. It glinted in the morning sun like something ceremonial. That pen's been with me since the day I signed the freight merger in '86, he said. Don't lose it. My throat caught. Grandpa, what is this? He gestured to the folder. For when the world doubts you. Inside were trust documents. Long ones. With language even my MBA hadn't fully prepared me for. I flipped through quickly at first until I saw my name. 30% ownership in Evercore. Held in a private trust. Effective since my 30th birthday. And at the very bottom, handwritten in his precise block letters. If Aubrey Langford is ever terminated from Evercore without documented cause, all voting rights and executive veto power will transfer to her immediately. No board vote required. Signed. Stamped. Witnessed by his attorney. I sat there frozen. The pen heavy in my lap. My name burned into the paper like a promise. Or a warning. You really think it could come to that? I asked softly. He didn't answer right away. He looked out at the lake, glassy and still, then said, People change when power's on the table, but you don't. I swallowed hard. This feels dramatic. He smiled faintly. So is betrayal. Then his voice dropped to almost a whisper. Promise me something, Aubrey. I turned toward him. Don't use it unless you have to. But if that day comes. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Use it without hesitation. I didn't take the elevator. I couldn't. The thought of standing inside that glass box, descending floor by floor while everyone on each level turned to watch me, no thank you. I took the back stairwell instead, the emergency one. The one with no windows and flickering lights and that faint industrial smell of cleaner and metal. My cardboard box was light. One framed photo, one coffee mug, the succulent I'd been keeping alive for 8 years, and the brass pen Grandpa gave me tucked in the side pocket of my coat like a relic no one else would understand. I moved quietly. Not because I was trying to be invisible, but because I already was. No one stopped me in the hallway. No one said goodbye. Some glanced up from their desks, then quickly looked away, pretending to answer emails, adjust their headphones, check their phones. These were people I'd stayed late to train, fought to keep during layoffs, defended during budget cuts. People whose weddings I'd attended, whose newborns I'd sent gifts to. Now, I was radioactive. Vanessa was CEO. And in a place like this, loyalty only lasts as long as your title. I passed by the break room. Empty. The boardroom. Closed. I kept walking. Near the back entrance, just before the loading dock, I saw someone standing with her arms crossed. It was Naomi, old assistant. She didn't smile. Didn't say anything at first. Just handed me a yellow sticky note, folded once. Then she nodded. One slow, deliberate nod. The kind that says, I see you, even if no one else does. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to cry. But I didn't. I just nodded back. And kept walking. It wasn't until I was in the parking garage, in the driver's seat of my car, that I opened the note. The handwriting was neat. Familiar. They're betting on your silence. No signature. No sign-off. Just those 6 words. I stared at them until the letters started to blur. Because they were right. This wasn't about business. This wasn't a routine restructuring. This was a strategy to erase me. Quietly, efficiently. Like I had never been here at all. I sat in that car for 20 minutes, staring at the building I had practically bled into. I remembered the nights I slept in my office during the 2011 crisis. I remembered walking Dad through his retirement plan step by step when he could barely hold a pen. And now, as Vanessa's new marketing campaign banners hung from the lobby windows, bold colors, new fonts, taglines like "The future starts now," I realized something deeper than pain. I wasn't just losing a job, I was losing my name inside a legacy I helped build. And the worst part? No one even asked why. I wasn't planning to look. Really, I wasn't. I had logged into my work laptop one last time just to export a few personal files, shut down inactive accounts, and maybe grab the last 6 years' worth of spreadsheets I'd built from scratch. It was supposed to be clean. clinical. But then I saw the notification. An internal email thread had been accidentally forwarded to my inbox. Subject line: Langford phase. Out, final revision. I froze. It was dated 6 months ago. 6 months. That's 3 board meetings. 2 strategy offsites. 1 leadership retreat where Vanessa and I had toasted champagne on stage like none of this was brewing beneath my feet. I clicked it open. And what I found didn't just sting. It burned. It was a full blueprint, a coordinated strategy to eliminate me from Evercore in stages. Slides, bullet points, talking prompts. My name in bold font across multiple documents, like a risk to be mitigated. Q2. Shift Aubrey from ops to non-core status. Q3. Frame departure as voluntary or cultural evolution. Avoid press or investor engagement. Maintain quiet optics. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me forgotten. There were charts showing how my removal could be spun as part of a fresh vision. Mock press statements in case shareholders asked too many questions. But it didn't stop there. One attachment caught my eye. A folder labeled Reallocations, Private. Inside were scanned contracts, signed documents, and internal memos, all pointing to a single name I hadn't heard in years. Spencer Gray. Vanessa's ex-boyfriend. The same Spencer we'd had to cut from the vendor list years ago for inflating freight costs and rerouting high-value shipments through shell companies. There he was again, right in front of me. Acting partner of Solves, LLC, a Delaware-registered logistics firm. And guess who had been quietly transferring Evercore's core vendor contracts to them? Vanessa. The documents showed she'd moved key freight routes, sustainability initiatives, and even the company's rebranding assets all into Spencer's hands. All outside board review. One memo had her digital signature on it. If Solvis handles Westyard's expansion and covers upfront costs, I'll approve transfer under supply chain modernization. No board vote needed. No vote. No oversight. Just smoke and mirrors dressed up as strategy. I sat back in my chair, chest tight. This wasn't just betrayal. This was theft. And suddenly, Grandpa's words echoed in my mind like a warning I had tried too hard to forget. If that day comes, use it without hesitation. Because that day had come. Right here. In black and white. On my screen. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about the company. The people. The name on every shipment, every invoice, every contract I had poured myself into for 15 years. If you've ever uncovered a betrayal that changed everything, hit subscribe. You'll want to hear how this unfolds. Because I wasn't going to walk away quietly. Not anymore. By the time I pulled into Whitaker and Coleman's office, the heartbreak had crystallized into something sharper. Not rage, not even grief. Just clarity. I wasn't there as a daughter, or a sister, or even a fired executive licking her wounds. I was there as the majority shareholder of Evercore Logistics. And the only person left willing to protect it. Mr. Whitaker greeted me with the quiet kind of heaviness that comes from serving 3 generations of a family business. His office still smelled like lemon oil and old books, the walls lined with plaques no one had dusted in years. He didn't ask why I was there. He just nodded toward the seat across from his desk and waited. I reached into my bag and pulled out the leather folder Grandpa had given me, the same one I had hidden in the back of my closet for 2 years, too afraid to look at it too long. Alongside it, I placed the pen. His pen. The brass was still cold in my hand. Whitaker opened the folder carefully, eyes scanning each page like he already knew what was coming. And maybe he did. When he reached the final clause, the one Grandpa had written in his own hand, he paused. Then looked up. Termination without cause, he said quietly, triggers full activation of voting rights, including executive veto power. Effective immediately. My hands curled in my lap. Vanessa never gave a reason. No review. No misconduct. No warning. Just a staged announcement and a handshake from legal. Whitaker nodded. Then she gave you everything you need. He slid the documents into a new folder, stamping them with his firm's seal. We'll notify the board. File with the secretary of the company before the quarterly session. Once it's processed, your authority becomes uncontested. For the first time in weeks, something inside me stirred. Not revenge, not satisfaction. Traction. A path forward. Then, as he stood to make copies, he hesitated. There's one more thing I need you to see, he said, walking to a cabinet and pulling out a thin red folder. What is it? State filings, vendor registrations, quiet asset transfers, all linked to a single holding company. I narrowed my eyes. Solvis LLC. He nodded. Registered to Spencer Gray. My stomach turned. She's transferring contracts, I said aloud, to her ex-boyfriend's firm. Freight lanes, vendor deal 7, are sustainability assets. All under the guise of modernization. It's not just unethical, Whitaker said. It's fraudulent, but unless someone challenges it, it becomes business as usual. I finished for him. I looked down at the pen in my hand. Vanessa hadn't just betrayed me. She was hollowing out the company from the inside and painting it with our family's name. Well, not anymore. I stood, took the pen, and nodded once. I want everything prepared, I said. And I want the board to see it before she knows I'm coming. Whitaker smiled slightly just at the corners of his mouth. You're not just fighting for your place anymore, Miss Langford. I met his gaze. No, I said, voice steady. I'm fighting for the truth. The room didn't go silent right away. It paused like the moment before a thunderclap when the wind holds its breath and everything tilts just slightly off balance. Vanessa was already halfway through her presentation when I walked in. She didn't look up at first. Didn't notice the weight of the folder in my hand or the way every head in the room turned toward the door as I stepped inside. But the second she saw my reflection in the monitor behind her, she froze. Just a flicker. A half-second delay in her slide change. But I saw it. Good morning, I said calmly, placing the folder on the conference table with quiet precision. I won't take much of your time. Vanessa recovered too quickly. Aubrey, she said, voice forced, casual. This is a closed. I have documentation, I said, without raising my voice. Proving my termination was conducted without cause. Which, under the Langford Trust Agreement, activates full voting rights and executive veto power, effective immediately. A silence swept the room like a sheet being pulled taut. At the far end of the table, Mr. Whitaker gave a single confirming nod. His presence alone spoke volumes. Vanessa blinked, lips parting, but no rebuttal came. Not yet. I slid copies of the trust to each board member, watching them flip through the familiar signature, the handwritten clause at the bottom, the seal of legal authority. Some leaned forward. Others leaned back. But no one looked away. And I wish that were all. I continued, reaching into my coat and placing my phone on the table, screen unlocked. But it isn't. I tapped the screen. Vanessa's voice filled the room. If Solvis handles the rebrand and Westyard development, I'll authorize the asset transfer. Quietly. No board vote. I'll frame it as sustainability restructuring. The air changed. No one moved. No one coughed. No one dared look at her except me. I didn't need to say anything else. The recording spoke for itself. Her voice. Her words. Her betrayal. Her silence. Finally, someone cleared their throat. It was Mr. Callahan, the chair of the audit committee. Where did this recording come from? He asked, not unkindly. It was sent to me anonymously, I replied, but I recognized the voice instantly. Later, I'd see the file metadate an anonymous email, no sender name. But the file was labeled E-Final. M4A. Elise. She hadn't just walked away with grace. She'd left me a weapon. Across the table, Vanessa's jaw clenched. Her knuckles whitened around the remote. That recording, she said through her teeth, is out of context. And two. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. It was exploratory conversation, Nothing was finalized. Mr. Whitaker spoke, now calm, even. The trust doesn't require intent, he said. It requires breach. A beat passed. Then another. And then Mr. Langston, our largest outside investor, the same one who had once championed Vanessa's appointment, leaned forward, folding his hands. I've reviewed the last 10 years, he said quietly. Aubrey rebuilt this company after the 2011 crash. She kept the lights on, kept the clients, digitized our ops. She's the reason we're even still sitting here. He turned to me. You built this. We follow you. The shift was instant. Heads nodded. A motion was raised. A vote was called. 7 in favor. 2 abstained. None opposed. Vanessa said nothing. Her shoulders were steel, but her eyesure eyes gave it all away. This wasn't just a setback. This was the end of her game. She didn't look back when she left the room. And I didn't follow. I just stood there, steady. Not because I won, but because I stayed. The vote passed. Just like that. 7 in favor. 2 abstained. No one raised a hand for her. There wasn't applause. No backslaps or congratulatory whispers. Just silence. That kind of stillness that settles after something heavy finally falls. After the noise stops, and all that's left is the echo of what used to be. Vanessa stood there for a moment frozen, as if she hadn't registered what had just happened. Her jaw locked, her eyes scanning the table like she was waiting for someone, anyone, to speak up in her defense. No one did. Mr. Whitaker calmly gathered the documents, slid them back into his leather folio, and stood without a word. The rest of the board stayed seated. Vanessa blinked too fast. Then her voice snapped like a rubber band under pressure. You planned this, she hissed, eyes locked on me. This entire setup, the timing, the silence, all of it. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. Because I didn't need to. She took a step toward me, her words unraveling. You've been playing the victim for years, waiting for your moment. You've always wanted to prove you're smarter, that you deserve this more than me. Her tone was climbing, louder now, raw with something between desperation and disbelief. You think you're better? Still, I said nothing. But her words did exactly what she feared. They exposed her. Right there, in front of the board, she lost the very thing she'd tried to curate for so long: control. She wasn't the poised, forward-thinking CEO anymore. She was just a woman unraveling in a room full of witnesses. Mr. Langston raised his hand, voice firm. That's enough. And it was. The chair confirmed the vote for the minutes. Vanessa Langford was officially suspended pending an internal audit, effective immediately. She stood still for another second, like she might argue. But she didn't. Instead, she gathered her things, only a folder and her phone, and turned to leave. Her heels echoed across the conference floor like final punctuation. Tap, tap, tap. She didn't look back. And I didn't follow. I stayed in my seat, letting the room breathe without her in it. There was no rush of victory. No grand declaration. Just a quiet exhale that had been waiting for too many years. When the room emptied out, I sat there for a few minutes longer, hands resting on the edge of the table. The pen Grandpa gave me was still in my pocket. The same one I hadn't touched since the last contract he ever signed. That part stayed with me. How it all began, not with ambition or strategy, but with legacy. With a man who saw what might come, and a woman who finally stopped pretending not to see it too. Vanessa's downfall didn't need a headline. It didn't need an audience. It only needed the truth. And now that truth had been spoken quietly, legally, undeniably. The collapse had come. Not with flames, but with stillness. I didn't come in swinging. That's what most of them expected, I think. After what happened in the boardroom, after Vanessa's exit, after the stunned silence that followed her footsteps down the hallway, there was an energy in the building. A kind of nervous electricity, like everyone was waiting for the axe to fall again. Just in a different direction. But I didn't bring an axe. I brought a clipboard. I arrived at 6:15 a.m., just like I used to. No cameras, no announcement. Just me, a thermos of black coffee, and the same pair of low heels I used to keep under my desk for years. The walls still held her slogan's bold future. Disrupt and redefine, next starts now. Let them stay a while longer, I thought. They'd fade soon enough. At 7 o'clock sharp, I gathered the department heads in the main conference room. No PowerPoints, no dramatic entrance. Just words. We're not chasing flash anymore, I said. No more vanity pivots, no more leadership games. Some sat stiff. Others nodded slowly. I kept going. We're going back to fundamentals clarity, accountability, and people first. That's how this company survived its first storm. That's how we'll survive the next. No applause. But I didn't need any. What I needed came quietly. In the small exhales. The glances exchanged between colleagues. The tension that started to loosen just a little at the edges. Over the next 3 days, I dissolved every shadow task force Vanessa had built. I reinstated key mid-level managers who had been quietly sidelined. I paused every major spending initiative pushed through in the last 6 months. And on Friday, I called Naomi back into my office. This time, not as my assistant, as senior advisor of legacy operations. She stared at me like she didn't believe it at first. Then she blinked hard, nodded once, and shook my hand with the same strength I remembered from our first product launch, years ago. She didn't cry, but I almost did. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Everidge Transporta, major client we nearly lost during Vanessa's leadership. Their CEO wanted a renegotiation. Your leadership is why we signed with Evercore in the first place, he said. You rebuild it, we'll stay for the long haul. 10-year contract. Signed that evening. I didn't celebrate. I sat in my office with the lights off, blinds half drawn, holding the brass pen Grandpa had once handed me with a simple promise. For when the world doubts you. I clicked it once. Then signed. That contract wasn't just revenue. It was proof. That slow, consistent leadership still had value. That trust could be rebuilt. That legacy, once fractured, didn't have to die. It could be rewritten one decision at a time. It arrived in a plain white envelope. No return address. No company logo. Just my name written across the front in familiar black ink, steady and sharp. Aubrey. I found it waiting on the corner of my desk one morning, just before sunrise. The building was still half asleep, lights humming to life, floors echoing with soft, early footsteps. The kind of morning when the world feels gentle for a moment, before the weight of the day sets in. I almost didn't open it. Thought maybe it was just an old note someone found while cleaning. A misfiled record, a leftover from another time. But the handwriting stopped me. I knew it instantly. Grandpa's. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a single page. Yellowed slightly at the edges, folded once down the middle, and written in his signature black ink, no formal greeting, no date. Just his voice, preserved in pen. Aubrey, clarity comes after betrayal. But once you see clearly, don't ever look away. I sat down slowly, reading it again. Your sister isn't your enemy. Confusion is. In this life, people will disappoint you. Systems will try to erase you. But if you still hold your name, your purpose, and your pen, you haven't lost. I stopped there for a moment. Let the words settle. The building around me felt quieter somehow, as if the letter had hushed the air itself. You'll be tempted to prove yourself. To make a speech. To burn bridges. But you don't need fire to reclaim what's yours. You need focus. Stillness. And the kind of strength that doesn't shout to be heard. My throat tightened. I hadn't realized I was holding my breath. Now take your place, and don't flinch. No signature. Just that. I sat with it for a long time. Not in grief. Not even in pride. Just stillness. The kind that comes when something finally makes sense. When the noise in your head clears, and all that's left is the quiet truth. He knew this would happen. Not the exact moment, not the details, but the shape of it, the weight of it, the test beneath the politics and the pain. He didn't want me to fight to be right. He wanted me to remember who I was when no one else would. That letter didn't give me new power. It reminded me I'd had it all along. And I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Not anymore. The office was quiet. Not tense. Not heavy. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a long storm. The kind that lets you breathe for the first time in what feels like years. I came in earlier than usual that morning. 5:45 a.m. The city outside still dark. My footsteps echoed down the hallway as motion sensor lights flickered on ahead of me. The walls still wore the remnants of Vanessa's era modern fonts, aspirational buzzwords, backlit posters with phrases like agility means everything. Unsao. I didn't tear them down. I just walked past them. Because that wasn't the fight anymore. On the corner of my desk sat a new email notification. I clicked it open without thinking. Subject line: Merger interest. Strategic future. The sender? Victor Lang. CEO, Apex Logistics Group. The same firm Vanessa had once tried to sell us out to quietly, without board approval. The one she thought would elevate our brand in exchange for giving away our control. But this message felt different. We've been watching the transition. We're impressed with how you've stabilized the company. If you're open to a future conversation this time, on your terms we'd like to meet. I stared at it for a long moment. Not because I was surprised, but because they finally saw what was always there. Not flash, not noise. Stability. I replied with one line. Happy to talk, but this time we don't bend. Then, I leaned back in my chair. Let the silence return. But now, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Later that day, I walked the floor. Not with a speech, not with a clipboard. Just presence. Some employees smiled as I passed. Some gave small nods. A few still looked unsure. That was okay. Rebuilding isn't loud. It's quiet. Slow. Daily. Like trust. Like legacy. In the break room, someone had posted a note on the corkboard scribbled on a pink sticky, barely legible. We missed you. Welcome home. I didn't know who left it. I didn't need to. I saved it anyway. That afternoon, as the sun lowered behind the city skyline, I pulled out Grandpa's pen again. The same one that had followed me through every turning point. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was using it to prove anything. I was using it to build. Build the company back not just to what it was, but to what it should have always been. Transparent. Steady. Human. No more erasing people in silence. No more strategy over soul. Just a team. A mission. And a name that meant something again. If you've ever been underestimated. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted. If you've ever had to rebuild something that was taken from you. This story was for you. Like, share, and subscribe if you know what it means to keep going when no one claps. Because sometimes the most powerful victories are the ones no one sees.